Hello and welcome, everyone. I am Dave Santamaria. I am the National Appraisal Marketing and Sales Director for Champions School of Real Estate. On behalf of our owner and founder, Rita Santamaria, and our president, Kimberly Didelowitz, and everyone at Champions, we want to say welcome and most importantly, thank you so much for being with us today. We are so grateful that you would take the time out of your day. We are honored to have three amazing champions in the appraisal profession with us to deliver their knowledge for anyone in the real estate industry, be it a broker, an agent, an inspector, or a lender. I know the topics they're going to cover today are extremely beneficial for anyone involved in the real estate transaction process. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Gynell Vestal from Clear Falls Valuation. She's a chief appraiser. She was recently featured in Valuation Review publication, which is a national publication. She helps host the Real Deal Mixer in the Dallas area, which is a monthly real estate education and networking event. I just learned that she did her licensing through us 20 plus years ago, so she's a champion for sure. And she's also one of our appraisal qualifying education instructors. So welcome, Gynell. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much for having me. I have about 20 minutes, so I'm going to dive right in and talk about AI for appraisers. AI is here. It could be every appraiser's new best friend. It can turn raw data into insightful points for us before we can say market value. So, big disclosure, I am not an AI engineer. I'm just an appraiser. I've been experimenting a little bit with appraising with AI tools, and I'm here to share what insights I have and how it's helped my own valuation be faster and more accurate. So think of AI as the sharpest research assistant an appraiser has ever had. It's always on, it's lightning fast. You can feed it large data sets, public records, maps, and even photos. It can clean and reconcile data for us, run quick stats, provide data insights, charts, graphs, and help us draft narratives. So really taking hours of grunt work and shrink it to minutes and let us still focus on expertise, judgment, client advice. So if AI can do all of this, what do they need us for? So AI's value rises and falls with us. We feed it clean data, we scrub the anomalies, we frame sharp prompts, apply sound judgment, and it can be a powerhouse. Neglect those steps and it's just noise. So AI handles grunt work, we provide judgment. So two core tools that I'm going to talk about today is really ChatGPT. O3 really for advanced reasoning is a good one, and Julius AI, both a browser-based, no fancy installations. So Julius AI is great for data science analysis, and I like to pair that together. I feel like they go so well together. Julia's AI does all the analysis, and then ChatGPT can help you craft the narrative. Both use simple, plain English, and can greatly reduce our turn times from days to hours. So what is Julius AI? It's an online data science assistant. Upload any file, ask questions, and you can get some powerful information. So within Julius AI, there's workflow, and it ensures projects are organized and reproducible. So when you have a query that you use often that works for you, you can save it in workflow and kind of streamline and get consistent results every time. Something simple, bar chart maker. You can choose your bar charts, feed it your data set, and makes it really easy just to give you a visual of what you can find on Julius. Julius is one of my favorite tools right now that I'm working with, clearly, and I don't know everything. I know far from everything, but I do get really good sound results from it, and I really appreciate that. So streamlining Julius with workflows. I have a lot of slides, so I'm kind of skimming through them. And so streamlining Julius, feed it large data sets, XLS, CSV files, PDFs, image, or any other formats. Julius can analyze your data, extract key information, create visualizations, graphs, charts, in a relative amount of time. You can tell Julius exactly what you need, like cleaning data, finding patterns, or generating insights, and it'll tailor the process to your request. The interaction is simple. It's a conversation. You ask questions, you provide instructions, you give it additional information, and Julius will execute that and then show the results step by step. Routine tasks, sorting data, cleaning data can be automated, save you a lot of time. So the benefits for appraisers: faster comp filtering, automatic market trend charts. You can use it to help you flag any use path alerts. So key features of Julius: process multiple data sources simultaneously, create custom visualizations, basically handle millions of rows of data without Excel crashes. That's always nice. So practical uses: comparable builders in the marketplace. That's one of my favorite uses that I like to do with feeding Julius AI a lot of information and studying all the builders in that market. Market trend visualizations, property feature comparisons, historical price analysis, and I'm sure there's a lot more that you can do with it. So how do you get started? It's a very powerful tool. You can visit Julius AI, julius.ai, create an account there. Initially, just upload your data set, start asking some questions in just plain English, and then you'll get all these charts and results that you can easily export to your report. So, like I said, you upload your data set, whatever format, and then organize that data. You can ask it to clean it up, get rid of outliers, organize it however you need to. It has really good cleaning capabilities, and then, put in whatever search filters that you want. So, and I know this is all new to a lot of appraisers working with Julius, so I kind of kept it simple, just show you what I do, how I do it, And like I said, I don't know everything. I've just been playing around with it for a few months, but it can be very useful to appraisers. So, of course, use clear, specific questions. It's like having a really good intern, I would say. Um, that's just brilliant, but they don't know appraising. So you have to be very clear and concise when talking to them. Organize, scrub the data before uploading. That's what I like to do. Just, just whatever um, uh, outliers I want to get rid of. Maybe, subdivisions that I know aren't comparable to mine. Whatever I need to do, I like to clean it up a little bit before I put it in there. It can do that, but if I know once I have that data set in a CSV or an Excel file, I'd like to clean it up a little bit and before uploading it into Julius AI. And then certain queries that I use often, I can save it in my workflow. And then I just have to upload a new data set, run that same query again, and get consistent results. Then export that in whatever format you would like. And you can just ask it to do that for you in plain English. So that's nice. So things like, statistical analysis, time series, map views, and then you choose whatever charts you describe, what charts you'd like it to produce for you, and it can do that for you pretty easily. It's a very powerful tool, like I said, and can do a lot. So kind of ran through that a little bit. Wanted to give you more of a live example. It would take too long to do it live on Julius, but can walk you through the steps of something I do quite often, which is I work in the new construction space a lot. So I would like to study new construction builders in the market. So I'll upload a data set, usually, like I said before, clean it up a little bit and upload it to Julius AI, and then ask it something simple like, who are the builders in the market by various key metrics? So by volume, sales price, price per square foot, days on the market, anything that will help me get a good visual of what's going on with builders in that market. And then I can ask it for various charts and then export those directly into my appraisal report, and it makes for a very powerful visual. So again, step by step, generate the data set from the MLS. I'll scrub that data set pretty, like I normally would. Then I'm going to upload it into Julius, and then I will write a prompt, something like this. I asked for vertical bar charts for volume, sales price, price per square foot, size of home, and days on the market for the new construction builders. And I asked for it to provide bar charts in a medium-sized size format individually, because sometimes it'll give me just all the charts together. And I told it that my subject builder was David Weekley Homes. So I wanted to emphasize that subject builder in red and combine any variances in names, remove empty spaces. So that's what I was looking for. So I just wrote out, and I didn't have to know all of this right off the bat. I kind of wrote what I asked, what I thought I wanted, and then based on the results it generated, I made some changes, and then this is what it gave me. So now I have these charts about all the builders in my neighborhood, in my market area. So by days on the market, how long they take to sell, the average sales price per builder, the average price per square foot by builder, average home sizes by builder, and the volume by builder. And then you can, this is just an example, you can do so much. You can look at the subdivision activity, who the builders are in the subdivisions, how they compare to yours. So you can just go on and on and on with this. And that was just a simple prompt that I used to generate that, to generate these charts. Didn't take me very long at all. I have it saved as a query in my workflow. So next time I input a new data set, I can, you know, just run this query and get the same consistent charts that I'm looking for, you know, for my next appraisal. So good resources, really. You can visit Julius AI. There's a lot of education documents that you can go through. I didn't do that. I wanted to jump in, try it. Took me helter skelter all over the place for a little while. And then I learned and learned and learned and learned a lot from other appraisers too that do use it and have started to use it. And we would kind of brainstorm together and play with it. And I think that's my way of doing things. But there's definitely a lot of guidance on their website, and I have had to email them before. I got lost a few times, and they were very responsive, so that was good too. It's just one tool that I wanted to share, a powerful tool for data analytics, I think, that is very useful to appraisers, and just want to encourage you to jump in there and give it a try. And it's like having a room of interns working for you. So I think it can go helter skelter. Like I said, you have to control the data, you have to control your prompts. It's only as good as the information you put in, the guidance you give it, and what you can get from it. So, and then ChatGPT. I think there's a lot of appraisers already on board that probably know a lot more than me on this, but such a useful tool. I really like incorporating it with Julius AI. So I'm doing all my data analytics on Julius, getting all my charts, my graphs. And then, ChatGPT is a great assistant in helping me, write my narrative, my story about, whether it's neighborhood, market, zoning, whatever I'm talking about. And so, again, can automate USPAP compliant language and checklists. So that's a nice thing when you tell it to write. You can say, make sure it's USPAP compliant. Have it. I like writing with as much accuracy and detail as I possibly can in plain English, and having it restructure that, smooth it out, and giving me a good narrative that I can add to my reports. So, and again, translate complex findings into client-friendly explanations. So we can cater even better, I think, to our readers that may not be appraisers. And of course, you can, use it for your revision requests too. So that's a handy tool right there. So with ChatGPT, there's so many versions of it, and ChatGPT 03, I think, is a great one for appraisers. When you have to have it think things through more in depth, I think that's a good one for us. So, and if you're not too familiar with ChatGPT, I would encourage you to definitely jump in and give it a try. You can go to chat openai.com, create an account, and then, play with it, use information you're already very familiar with and see how it responds. Ask it for rewrites, for summaries, for compliance checks. And it's really all about your prompts, and you can keep going, follow up with a prompt. It doesn't give you what you're looking for, and you can keep working on that. And you're just using plain English, so that's really nice. So then you can copy text into your report quite easily. So AI is no longer a distant concept. It's practical, it's field tested. It is a powerful tool. I think it's an important tool for appraisers. Like I said, it is the, spreadsheet from 30 years ago, right? There's a learning curve, but I think if we embrace it, and I was just on another podcast and we were talking about, appraisers, a lot of appraisers not using a tablet still. And so I would say definitely jump on the tablet and then AI, because there's a lot of changes coming, and it's really helpful. We have these assistants that we can put to use for us. So it helps us work faster, sharper, be more accurate, and definitely work a lot smarter. And then I think the firms that weave AI into their valuation workflow today will set tomorrow's standards for speed, accuracy, and insight. And finally, I would just like to thank my assistants, both Julius AI and ChatGPT, for helping me create this presentation. So that's the end of my presentation. I know it might be new for some people. Like I said, I'm not the expert. I'm happy to share what I know. And so if you have any questions, and I know I kind of ran through that, but if you have any questions, I'm here.
No, thank you so much, Gynell. That was fantastic informative. What I love is that it's just so practical for our viewers, and just showing, step by step through your slide presentation, how it can be beneficial. And you brought up so many good points, a couple of key takeaways. When it comes to AI, the data is only as good as what gets put into it, right? I was just having a conversation with somebody, and they were telling me whether this is true or not. They were like, AI couldn't generate a picture of a full glass of wine because there's no picture out there where there is a full glass of wine to the brim. Every single painting picture is always, half full, three quarters, because you don't ever pour. So it couldn't generate that image because it didn't have that image to pull from. And so, as beneficial and as smart as they are, they're only as smart as the data that gets put into them. And you drove that home very nicely. One question I do have, is Julius AI a free version or is it a paid version of that tool?
So I ran through the free version very quickly.
Okay.
There is a free version. I think after that, you can pay like $30 a month on a subscription or pay for it annually. I would definitely give the free version, a shot and get comfortable with it and see if it's a tool you can incorporate into your daily workflow, maybe before committing. I know there's a lot of AI tools. This is just, I think, one that's really powerful for appraisers.
Right, right. And then I did have a question because I thought you illustrated this very nicely as well. So from the time that you submit your prompt to Julius, especially in those bar graphs, how long did it take Julius to spit out those graphs to you?
Um, A couple minutes, not too long, but sometimes depending on the query you're asking it to do and how complex that is sometimes, or how much data, how big your data set is. And again, how complex your query is. But sometimes I'll be doing other things alongside it. So if I know it's going to take a minute, a lot of times it'll run Python and, analyze the data for you. And yeah,
Right, right. And so in a follow-up question to that would be so it took all of that information and spit it out in a couple of minutes versus how
right.
long would that have taken you before you used Julius to do that?
Hours, right? A lot of hours. If you could even, extract all that information that it does. So yeah, very powerful tool.
Okay. So I would
Be
I
a
would
learning curve
almost
though. I would
yeah, that is one of our attendees mentioned, the learning curve. And it brings up a good point. I would encourage the group that you're going to have to dedicate some time, right? And you can probably elaborate on what kind of time you put into experimenting, but the payoff is that, whereas you were spending hours in one area, building these charts and getting this data so it can be ready for your report, now you're spending minutes. So now you can use some of that time perhaps to apply to familiarizing yourself. And I've never even considered the idea of integrating them. Is another thing that I love that you did was not just using Julius and then that's your one LLM, that you're using. You're also integrating with ChatGPT to then again save yourself time. And so how much time do you spend, maybe you want to break it down by day or by week, kind of just exploring and experimenting to familiarize yourself and get that learning curve up to speed?
uh, a good chunk of time. It's fascinating. I'm very fascinated with a lot of what AI can do. But it's really is, you're definitely in control and you need to be in control of what you put in there, your data set, your prompts, everything. And it can go sideways real quickly. So in the beginning, it would take me a few hours. I was just playing around with it and trying to understand it. So definitely give it some time and be patient with yourself because I've had people try it and say, "Oh, it went sideways so fast. I'm not going near it." Um, but it's learning a new language and it's not that scary once you understand why it reacts the way it reacts. You didn't give it sufficient information or sufficient direction, so it kind of assumed a lot of things. So it's kind of like I said, having a really smart intern. They're really smart, but they don't know appraisal. So you have to guide them, right, every step of the way. And so it gets like everything, it gets quicker and quicker. And now that, I've streamlined some queries, much easier, right? I have new construction I'm working in. I want to know what builders, compete with my subject. I can run this query. Now, great visual for me, great visual for, any reviewer, underwriter. They understand why I selected the sales I selected, how they compete in the market. Answered a lot of questions right there.
Indeed. Indeed. And we have probably time for one more quick question, and then we'll let you be on your way. Is Julia specifically for appraisers or real estate in general?
I don't think it's specifically for realtors, for real estate in general, or for appraisers. I think it's just a powerful data science um, assistant. So,
Right. Going to produce those charts and graphs and visuals.
right.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Gynell. That was incredible knowledge on just how powerful the AI tools are and just how practical they are. So thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you for experimenting and being willing to come on and share that with others. And we look forward to seeing you in class here in the future. And thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate
So
it.
you bet, you bet. We're going to move over now to our next presenter. Um, It's going to be Mike Bowden. He's the owner and founder of Bowden Appraisal Group, which has been in business since 1993. They are based out of the Woodlands, Texas, which is just outside of Houston, and without a doubt, one of the most respected appraisal groups in the state. I could start on a list of Mike's accolades, but I would take up way too much of his presentation time, so I'm not going to do that. But Mike is an expert in all things appraisal, and because of that, he's often called on to be an expert witness, an expert consultant. So we are so glad to have you, Mike. Thanks for being here and for sharing your knowledge on appraisal litigation.
Well, thank you, Dave. Glad to be here. Glad that everybody is here to get some information and some knowledge on litigation appraisals. I've been doing this I started in 85, but I started litigation work around 1993. And we've got 8 appraisers in the company, and there's 2 of us that do litigation work. And what I'm going to do today is just go through some of the pitfalls, some of the issues in doing or accepting an assignment for litigation. Some of the appraisers here, or even some of the realtors that are in attendance, may get the opportunity to or request to do an appraisal for litigation. And we're going to talk about that. I'm trying to prompt some questions from you to get this a little more exciting, not as boring as some people may expect it to be. We'll kick it up a little bit here, but I am going to talk about the assignment, the request for the assignment, and how you should handle that during your inspection, some things that you need to be aware of. And ask questions on, and in a court appearance, depositions, answering questions under testimony, things like that. We're going to hit on some of those. Anytime you have a question, please send it in. If we don't get to it, I will respond to your question after the class. And Dave will give my phone number if you have issues or questions, or you have a case that you might not be able to handle. Maybe you want to see if I want to look into it. I'll be glad to do that and give you some advice and so on and so forth. And certainly my cell number will be there. You can call me at any time. I will answer the phone or call you back. Now, as a realtor, there is going to be a time, more than likely, let's say you sold a house a year ago, and now those people are going to get a divorce. And they call you instead of me because they don't want to pay for an appraisal, and they haven't really gotten their attorney yet, but they want you to do a CMA. And there is some caution to that. CMA development, as you know, is a pricing point. Appraisal development is evaluation. There are 2 different procedures there. Your CMA could end up being an exhibit in the case, and you could end up having to testify and defend your CMA. CMA development is not a very high standard compared to a state certified appraisal, and so there are weaknesses there. And in your testimony, you may have to testify to that, and if you have not done that, it can be pretty stressful. So just some things to consider as a realtor if you are asked to present a CMA for the purposes of some sort of a litigation. Now, as appraisers, if some of you have done any litigation work, how do you get the assignment? How does it come in? I mean, it's not the same way that you get an email from a AMC for your lender. Typically, what happens is that the law office will send you an email. Sometimes the lawyer will actually call to discuss the appraisal. And you, as the appraiser, need to get a real good handle here on what you're appraising, what are the issues with the property, before you quote a fee or a turnaround time. There can be a number of questions to ask: condition of the property, location. Is there been any outbuildings, any issues with access to the property? And when is there a rush? Do they need this for their mediation, which is coming up next week? What are there any issues here that would require you to increase the fee, or maybe not even accept the assignment? And it's real important that you get these answers. Then you really, what I normally do, will, if it's more complex property, I'll go back and try to run some comps and take a look at the property on Google or MLS and see exactly what I'm dealing with. And then you can contact the client, the lender, sorry, but the lawyer, and ask them to send over an engagement. Now, and you can send them an engagement. Sometimes we'll do that, or they may send the engagement over to you. Now, another thing is this: you don't always get the request for litigation appraisal from the attorney. You may get it from one of the parties to the case. And that can cause a bit of an issue. Your client now is the party. Let's say it's a divorce, and the wife is calling and wants you to do the appraisal for her. Now she is your client, not the attorney. And the report goes to her, and discussion about the results goes to her, not to her attorney. Now, attorney can be an intended user and so on and so forth. But you need to make sure who your client is in accepting the assignment. It may not be the attorney, and it may or may not be the court. Sometimes the attorney will send over a request for an appraisal and have already designated you as the expert witness with the court. And I've gotten the court document to show that before they even asked you to do the appraisal. And so there's just different ways that these assignments can come in. And it's real important that you find out what you're dealing with before you quote that fee. Now, in inspection, if you are going out to the property, and there can be a lot of different issues. Sometimes, and I focused on divorce, but I'm going to talk about a couple of other litigation appraisal assignments. But a lot of it would likely going to be divorce issues. And in a lot of cases, both parties are there, the husband and the wife. And you're working for one of the parties, the attorney for the wife or the wife. And the husband is there. And you're the appraiser, and you are in kind of a position there of, what should I do? How should I discuss this? What if he has questions? And that is a pretty touchy area for you. And so you need to know how to handle that. There's a long list of ways to handle it. Generally, you do not discuss anything about the specific appraisal to the other party. You would discuss just general appraisal. So how do you pick comps? How do you measure? What pictures do you take? And you talk in generalities for the answers. And then your client may have questions. And I've been in cases where both of them have been present. And then once I finish my inspection, my client will get her in her car, ask me to follow her, and I've driven around the corner to 2 blocks away to discuss my results of the inspection with her, and not have her husband present while I'm standing in the front yard talking. So you get all kinds of things. That's just one example of the inspection process. In another issue, and you just never know what's going to happen. Sometimes it gets very interesting. I did a divorce appraisal, a country property. And when I got to the property, the opposing counsel and the husband were there and met me along with my client, which was the wife. And the attorney had a video camera and followed me over my shoulder, videoing me as I measured and inspected and took my pictures for the entire time I did the inspection, like over an hour. He was right over my shoulder. And that was quite an experience. But you never know. Another time, I was on the property, and the two spouses got into some huge argument, and I had to leave. Another time, we went to the property with my client. She had been out of town, and it's the first time she's back to the house, and the house had been burglarized by the husband, and the police came, and I had to turn around and leave, and then come back another time. And so that inspection, some of the questions you need to ask, are like the condition of the property. Is it vacant? Are there any issues with the spouse? And that you need to be aware of. One time, I was escorted by a uniformed police officer because the spouse was angry and agitated, and they weren't sure what kind of response they would get if I walked up there. So that's happened also. And so that's just a few of the experiences. I'm going to get into a couple more here. Now, when you are asked to do these appraisals, there's a difference between a litigation appraisal and a mortgage appraisal that's pretty prominent. In a mortgage transaction, all the parties involved in that transaction are wanting you to make one value, hit that sales price or hit that number that's necessary for them to close that loan. Everybody's going to get paid, title company, realtors, so on and so forth. Everybody gets paid if you make this number. In litigation appraisal, it's different. You've got one party over here wanting this number, high number, and you got the other party over here wanting the low number. And they're pulling you both ways. And so it is extremely important that you are unbiased and you represent the property. And you will certainly let them know that, but you're not swayed to one direction or the other by all the influences that can come from you, from your client, especially if your client is one of the parties to the case. And so, and you stand by your number, but you're not biased. And that's really, really important that you focus on that. When you pull your comps, you make your adjustments. She said she wants it over 300,000 and he wants it under 250. And you know these numbers because they've been given to you. And then you stay right in there with what you can support. And another thing is, when you put that report together and those adjustments are on there, every one of those adjustments, I know in Fannie Mae, you're going to have to support them, but here that support needs to be able to be defended in court for an adjustment for site value, for GLA, for a garage, or whatever it might be. Your adjustments for those factors, you need to have support for it. And because you could be, every time you take one of the assignments, you could have to testify. They'll tell you, well, there's no way we're going to settle this case for sure. And we just need this value because we're not going to use the appraisal district numbers, and they're going to settle. And they'll assure you you're not going to have to testify. But everyone that I do and everyone that you do, every appraisal you do for litigation, you should be thinking about it before you accept assignment. Can I produce a credible assignment results? And can I defend that in court? When I finish an appraisal for litigation, I do not send it that day. I wait probably 2 days and I'll think about it. I'll go back into it and look at it. I'll read my commentary. I'll change something. I'll make sure that I understand all the adjustments. Can I defend this if I'm in court? And I think that's good advice for you if you decide to get into litigation work, that you don't rush. Once that appraisal is complete, Sit on it. Wait. You'll think about it at night. The next day, look at it. Something will come up almost every time to tweak it a little bit and make it the credibility or the defense of it is more in line. Now, a lot of the properties you would appraise have got deficiencies, and such as they have an unfinished room, or they have some roof repair that's needed, or some other item that's more of a high ticket item. And the requirement for that third party inspection is real important here also. You can't estimate repair of some plumbing issues, or you've got some mold. And so it's important to get the third party to do an inspection report and a cost to cure number, and then you generally will pass the buck and put that cost to cure number into the valuation and produce that report as an addendum to your appraisal. It's important that you don't be subjective about some way of curing the problem that you're not really an expert in, because they'll get you on that if they want to question you. And extensive comments is necessary there to make sure you cover all of your adjustments and what you've done there. Now, the report that you complete and you send to the attorney, or when your client would send it to the attorney, that report now can be an exhibit in the case. And if there's any changes to it, you're going to change that report. Oh, I need to add another comp, or I need to make this a comment. Well, now, if the attorney's going to send it back to you, then you've got prior service disclosure within the report. And opposing counsel, if they take this to trial, may want both reports and want to know why you changed it in the first place and you didn't, whatever the change was. It creates, kind of a can of worms there. So just realize any changes to that report after it goes to the attorney, you would want to make sure that the attorney understands that change would be a disclosure that you had prior work and you did you did a change to that report. Now, let's talk a bit about if you go to court. Why would somebody want to take you to court? Why would the opposing counsel want to put you on the stand and question your work? There are a number of reasons. One is there's another appraiser, which you should already know about, and the values are way off. And therefore, they can afford the cost of your expert witness testimony and the attorneys and the court cost to bring it to trial. That's a big expense, but it depends on the valuation of your property. And I mean, if you got $1 million property and you're at 1.4 and they're at 8, then you could have an issue there where you have to testify, and that's one of the reasons. Another reason they would ask you to testify is there's something wrong with your report that they don't understand. There's a weakness there. There's an issue there that they're going to question you on. And that's why you need to be able to, before you even send the report in, to make sure your report is defendable. You know it upside down, inside and out. And I've testified many times, and a couple of times there really wasn't anything. They wanted to ask you a few questions about your comp selection or one of the adjustments, and basically just to defend your value and say that's what it is. And that was it. There wasn't any opposing counsel's appraiser on the other side. And so it might not be much, but it could be quite a bit of issues with you on your testimony. Now, why would somebody want a deposition? I mean, if some of y'all have done legal work, you can be deposed and then you can come to trial. Well, why depose me and spend that money and then have the trial set, 2 months later. Well, depositions are different than a trial, meaning you're the only witness. And the setup in a depot is generally a desk like I'm sitting at with a camera across the way, and they video it. And you have the attorney or attorneys, and I'll talk about that in a second. And they're lined up there, and they're going to ask you questions. And it usually will take all day for a deposition about your appraisal. They go through detail after detail, and some of the questions don't make any sense at all. And some of them really focus on some issue within the appraisal that they don't understand or they believe that you're in error on. But one of the tricks about attorneys and depositions is that the deposition is generally going to be 3 hours or 2 or 3 hours in the morning, maybe 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, something like that. In the morning when you're there to begin with, they're going to go through a few questions and answers, and then all of a sudden they're going to ask some very specific question about your report. Probably where they're going to, what are the issues with it, and you're going to give an answer. Then that afternoon, when you're tired, you've been there all day and answering all these questions and you're under all this stress, they're going to ask that question again. They're going to reword the question. And if you give a different answer because you didn't recognize it, and that answer is different, you said up here that the fence was gray, and over here you said the fence was blue, then they got you. And they'll say, which one is the lie? And it may not be a big deal. You say, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It just really was gray or white, whatever I said this morning. But the point is, their job is to discredit you as an expert witness. And then they discredit you, then they discredit the credibility of the report. It diminishes the report's strength within the case, and therefore the other side is strengthened, and your appraisal is not as strong a document. So that's something to be aware of. I've had that happen to me a number of times, and the one case that I had was a divorce. It was involved with termites, termite infestation, and damage and equity loss and disclosure and so on and so forth. It's a multi-million-dollar house, but the attorney that hired me was for the buyer who bought the house, and it had all these termites. The buyer sued the seller, the realtor, the appraiser, and the home inspector. The appraiser was let loose. The other three were in the case, and we had a deposition. And that deposition was an all-day deal, and it had all three attorneys in the depot. And I was cross-examined under oath with a stenographer and camera and so on and so forth by three different attorneys on three different topics within that one appraisal. And it was quite a day. My client won the case. It was a pretty good outcome. But I knew that when I took the assignment that there was multiple parties, multiple defendants, and we have a plaintiff that I work for. So that's something you decide on when that assignment comes in, whether you want to take it or not. Now, the last thing we'll talk about is on the stand. They're going to ask you about competency. How many times have you been on the stand? What have you ever been in federal court or district court? And how many appraisals for litigation have you completed? So on and so forth. That's a competency thing. Another thing is that it's very important that you focus on the question from the attorney. If he asked you, did you take a picture of the pasture over the back fence? And your answer Some appraisers may, well, no, I couldn't get to the back fence. There's too much debris, so I had to go around the side of the garage over the neighbor's house and the fence over there and then go take a picture. You don't do that. Did you take a picture of the pasture over the back of the fence? Yes. That's it. Answer the question. If he wants more information, he'll ask it. Just remember that most of the time, the lawyer who's asking you the question already knows what is likely to be your answer before he asks it. And therefore, you just make a focus, you answer the question. Two more points and I'll be done here. One is, do not, let me start over. When you are going to testify, you are not in the courtroom. You are an expert and you are to wait outside the courtroom in a waiting area. And when you are called to testify, the bailiff will come and get you, and you will walk in and sit down, take the oath, sit down. And then when you're done, you leave the courtroom. You don't get to see anybody else's testimony. Do not bring anything with you. Your file, your briefcase, some notes, because that is not evidence, and they're going to want to know what it is, and they're not going to let you use it unless both sides get to look at it and read it and file it as an exhibit. So you just walk in just like I'm sitting right here, and they'll hand you a copy of the appraisal, and then you can answer the questions based on that appraisal. And my last point here is you stand by that value. There's not another value. Based on the scope of work, the assignment, and your research, the value is that number. And if you say, well, there's a range and all this, or there could be another number, then you weaken the report. So, and I welcome any questions you might have, and I certainly would take a phone call if you would like. We can certainly talk about any cases you might want, or even if you have some more questions about getting into this. When I did it back in the 90s, I just started. I just had attorneys, or a couple of attorneys I knew, and they all started ordering appraisals, and I just winged them. And that's kind of how I started. Of course, that was 30 years ago, but things aren't that much different. The other last point is when you turn that appraisal in, there's a lot of people that are going to look at that report. Just so you know that. I mean, I've had the judge ask questions in a trial when it's a bench trial, and the judge looked at the appraisal and he asked me questions. You know, the opposing counsel, the other client, I mean, the other party, and it could be all kinds of things from not only divorces, it could be estates, family members fighting. It could be a issue with a HOA and some violation of some covenant, something like that. So there's different things to be aware of. But anyway, there you go. That's pretty much what I've got. And certainly my cell number, Dave will get that out, our website and our email address. I'd be happy to help you with any questions. When you want to get started, there's certain assignments that you can take that get you kind of break the ice and get you involved. There is a nice source of income, a different thing, different item you can put on your resume and CV, as they say in litigation, and there's other information there that's important, and I'll be glad to share it with you and help you if I can in any way.
Absolutely. One question that came through is what are your suggestions with litigation appraisals on the rise? How can appraisers best position themselves as a reliable expert, or actually what can they do to market to attorneys to get that work?
Well, attorneys are looking for experience, and that is the key. When you put your CV or your resume together and you give that to an attorney, they are looking for someone that they can have confidence in that can defend that report. They don't want to hire someone for their client that may have some weaknesses that if it goes to trial, they could get chewed up and spit out by the opposing attorney. So they're looking for an experience. Now, you can't get experience without getting the job. You can't get the job without experience. Yeah, that's how that works, So I would go to attorneys and have your resume, have your confidence level there, have your experience where you can talk to that attorney. But you're going to an attorney that may be a family law attorney, and you're going to be dealing with some minor divorce issues. A lot of times, some of these attorneys they're not the big attorney in the high rise. They're a small attorney, a small office in a small town. And you're trying to get some of those jobs where there's not much of equity in the home or the property, and that's pretty much all there is. And you do that for that case. And that puts one on your resume. It puts another one on your resume if you get that in there. That's the only way that I know that you can get started. It's hard to get started because the attorneys don't want to hire someone that might not be able to testify in a professional manner and help them win their case. But I'll also say this. You go to these attorneys and you get these jobs. I would say 75% of the assignments do not go to trial. And therefore, you can, a lot of them are going to be divorces. If you get anything other than a divorce, I would be very leery of taking it. But if divorce matters settle almost all the time. And so if you can get some of these assignments from some of these attorneys, and maybe you get a referral from a realtor or another attorney or some way to get in the door and start doing them, then the door will open and you can you can expand at that point. But be careful with that expanding, but to more complex properties. But that's the only way that I really know of that you can do that. You can put litigation appraisals on your resume if you want, but you haven't done any. But or maybe you want to do one and then put it on there. But I think you could probably find an attorney or several attorneys that might want to put you on their list to do the appraisal. One last thing, the fee. The fee for the appraisal, if it's a simple property, then you're probably looking at $500-600. We charge minimum $650, no matter what it is. But a lot of attorneys are cost sensitive to their clients, and so if you want to, maybe do a little bit of lower fees, you might have a chance to get that little simple appraisal for divorce that the next appraiser charges $650, like me, would not. And then your hourly fee, that's another item of what are you going to charge an hour per hour if you're going to do the testimony. It's not $500 or $600 like an attorney, but we're $350, $375 an hour to testify, and that money I charge right now $350, but a minimum of 4 hours no matter what, and then I get the 4 hours up front. Or at the time that I go to court, and then I'll bill for any more that's there that goes over the 4 hours. But that's the answer to the question. I know it kind of got elaborated on a little bit there, but that's
No,
my best shot.
we appreciate we appreciate all of your knowledge that you shared and for elaborating. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate that. Again, I love Mike's open door policy. For whether you're an agent, lender, inspector, appraiser, he welcomes you to call him, come in, reach out to him, even if it's just a question. He told me when we met, I'll answer it. I'll take the time to answer it. So we will transition to our final presenter today. He is Eric Bowden of the Bowden Appraisal Group, and I loved meeting with Eric as we have that mutual connection of working for a family business. And Eric, no doubt, is continuing the legacy of his dad, Mike, and has become an expert in his own right. He's developed courses on various appraisal topics one being accessory dwelling units. And so we are incredibly lucky to get to hear from Eric Bowden today as well and have him share his knowledge with us. So welcome, Eric, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dave. I'm excited to be here with Champion School and talk about accessory dwelling units. Right. So my name, Eric Bowden. Thank you all for having me again. The owner of Bowden Appraisal. You all just met my father before. He was the founder. But yeah, I've taken over the reins, and some of my experience has helped me dive into some of these topics a little bit. With the large staff we have at Bowden Appraisal, some of my main job titles there are like a head reviewer, basically. So not only am I active as a real estate appraiser, I have all of my staff and their work files and appraisals every day, maybe 20 assignments a day or so that go out, go through my office, right? And so I see a tremendous amount of work, also basically a chief problem solver in a sense. So, things show up, complex assignments and situations, including accessory dwelling units, often pop up as topics in my office of things we need to handle inside of an appraisal and figure out how to support evaluation and discuss the methodology in which we applied to get there. Accessory dwelling units. What is that? And valuation of those things is kind of the main topics. Identification of accessory dwelling units when you're on a property, as well as when you're reviewing sales and listings. This is important information not only for appraisers, it's important for real estate agents and underwriters, and to understand the process in which an appraiser may need to attack an accessory dwelling unit in its identification, as well as its application and valuation. So what do we do with that? So what is an accessory dwelling unit, right? So, the terms that you may hear out there, quarters, right? Garage apartments, bunkhouses, carriage houses, casitas, man cave, she shed. I mean, it goes on and on. If you've been out there, you've seen it. And these terms, for the client, let's say it's the homeowner or the agent or any person that's associated with the property, they are somewhat interchangeable in their mind, right? But in our job as a real estate professional, we have to understand the difference between these items and why that's important, right? Why is the difference of identifying an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU, is important versus identifying an additional feature, right? Like an office in a barn or an office in a workshop or the converted man cave that everybody gets to hang out with a pool table, right? And the main reason is the development of value, right? And the requirements in which an accessory dwelling unit may need a comparable versus the flexibility that may be present if it's not an accessory dwelling unit. All right, if it doesn't have certain features that qualify as an accessory dwelling unit, you can be a little bit more flexible in what you're looking for to compare it to. And with an accessory dwelling unit, we would need to find another accessory dwelling unit. Okay. So I pulled up here. I'm going to read off a little bit here. This is from the Fannie Mae Selling Guide. These are definition sets for standardized definition of what an accessory dwelling unit is, right? And so I'm going to read through a little bit of these things, and then we'll talk about how a definition in a book can then be applied in a real world scenario, right? How do we take this knowledge and make it useful for real estate agents or appraisers when we're on a property or reviewing, MLS data for sales and listings. Okay, accessory dwelling units they're typically additional living area that's independent of the primary dwelling that may have been added to, created within, or detached from a primary one-unit dwelling. Okay, the ADU must provide for living, sleeping, cooking, and bathroom facilities, and must be on the same parcel as the primary one-unit dwelling. That's key, guys. Okay. Only one ADU is permitted on the parcel of the primary one-unit dwelling. Only one. Okay. The ADU must be subordinate or smaller in size to the primary dwelling. They must have the following separate features from the primary dwelling. Separate, guys. So inside the ADU, it must have means of ingress and egress, so entrance and exits. It must have a kitchen. It must have a sleeping area, a bathing and bathroom facility. Okay. The ADU may, but is not required to include access to the primary dwelling. However, it is not considered an ADU if it can only be accessed from the primary dwelling, right? So an ADU must have a separate entrance, right, from the main dwelling of the primary dwelling. And the kitchen. So when you're looking at these things on property, right, the kitchen must have a minimum of the following items. Again, this is from the Fannie Mae definition set. They must have cabinets, a countertop, a sink with running water, and a stove or a stove hookup. Okay. An independent second kitchen by itself, right, is just a house with a second kitchen does not qualify that area as an ADU. Okay. The removal of the stove, right? You show up and there's no stove in there. That does not mean, it doesn't change it from not being an ADU. As long as it has the connections of the stove, it would then still qualify as an ADU. And then verifying its legal use, right? Some areas of our state, not so much in Houston, but some of our areas of our state have zoning ordinances, right? So we need to verify legality of the ADU, whether it's permitted there. And then it goes into examples. Examples of ADUs include living areas of a garage, a living area in a basement can be applied there, a small addition to the primary dwelling. And interestingly enough, a manufactured home can be an accessory dwelling unit. Now, that's tricky. Okay, so a manufactured home can be an accessory dwelling unit, right? It would still need to qualify, right? It needs to be smaller than the main dwelling, needs to be on the same parcel, it needs to have all those factors that we just talked about. Okay. Second, with manufactured homes, we need to make sure that they are real property. Okay. If they have not been converted to real property, they are personal property on the site, and then we're not considering that an ADU, right? It's a personal property. You can verify that if you want to write this down. In Texas, it is the TDHCA website, all right? Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. Okay. Tax records, guys, tax records can be deceiving, right? It's not always exactly how it looks on the tax records for manufactured homes. You want to go to the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs website. Their manufactured housing division has it specifically labeled whether or not that manufactured home has been converted to real property. Okay, very simple. It's an item that in all of my manufactured home reports is scanned into my assignment as my data source, right, for verification of a primary dwelling has been converted to real property. One caveat with manufactured homes is ADU. You cannot have a manufactured home as an ADU if the primary residence is also a manufactured home. I'll say that again, okay? If you roll up to a house and you've got, 2,000 square foot manufactured home, and behind it, you've got a 900 square foot manufactured home. That's not an ADU, guys. The primary residence cannot be a manufactured home, okay? It can only be an accessory dwelling unit, okay? So that's the definition set, pretty straightforward. But, applying some of these definitions to the real world, what are we going to be looking for when a realtor shows up or appraiser shows up to a property and you got an inspection? If you're an appraiser, you got an interview with your client and boom, there's something in the backyard, right? Or there's something, you see some windows over that garage over there, right? And it looks like, I don't know, there's something going on over there. Okay. So, your client, might be talking, and you've got to stay focused about, what we have to identify, what we have on property. Okay. So some of the questions I came up with and things that I use on property and I teach other appraisers and other realtors to pay attention to. One is the, whatever it is, right? We haven't identified it yet. Is it detached? Okay. Detached is kind of a nebulous word in this profession. And I've heard it all, guys. So like if you've got a converted space like in a garage, right? But it is attached through a breezeway, right? What they mean by the structure being detached is the heated and cooled area of the primary dwelling. Is that connected to the feature, right? One of my appraisers, I like how he described it a couple weeks. We were doing a realtor class a couple weeks ago, and he goes, "Guys, if you can walk outside and you can get rain on you, it's not attached." Right? We've left the heated and cooled space, right? We've left the primary living area. We've walked outside or we've walked through the halfway through the unheated garage to find a staircase on the other side of the garage, right? We've left the main dwelling, right? That main dwelling is not contiguous, right? The heated and cooled area is not contiguous, right? That is number one when we're looking to identify these guys, okay? Once you've identified that, we're going to go through some of those questions, right? Does it have separate access to the main dwelling? We talked about that. Does it have the kitchen, right? Not a kitchenette, a kitchen, right? Stove, countertops, cabinets, right? You want to have a truly usable kitchen, right? Um, do we have a full bathroom? Do we have a sleeping area? An ADU does not state that you have to have a bedroom, right? It does state that you have to have a sleeping area. So the one I was at, I think maybe 2 days ago, I was in downtown Houston and beautiful 1912 bungalow home in the front, and behind it is an ADU, right? It's got a garage, and above it is your ADU, rentable, right? Separate structure, access from the outside. Um, that space did not have a bedroom. It was a studio, right? But did it have a sleeping area? Yes. Did it have a kitchen? Yes. Was it access from the exterior of the home? Yes. Right. We got a bunch of tests going. Hey, this is an ADU. Okay. Now, what if it doesn't have that stuff? Okay. Well, there's a lot more of those than there are actually ADUs out there, guys. Okay. You're going to get more if you're in the country. You can find a workshop in the back, and inside the workshop itself, it's got a little bed and bath, right? No kitchen, right? You've got she sheds, right? Offices, she sheds, man caves. Those guys, again, you gotta go through those tests, right? Is it detached? Does it have the kitchen? Does it have the full bathroom? Does it have a sleeping area? Most of the one of the main items that usually disqualifies it, from my experience, is the kitchen. All right. So, casitas, you see those a lot. It's like just a little, put your teenagers over there, or you put your family and friends that are in town, you put them in their bed bath off to the side of the house, right? It just doesn't have the kitchen though, right? It doesn't have, you want to think, is this a unit, an accessory dwelling unit? Is it a unit that could be potentially rented, right? That's another test in your brain, right? Is it filled out enough that it could operate on its own, separate from the primary dwelling? Okay. And then the question after all that is, now we've identified it. Are we including it in the square footage of the home? No, you're not. Realtors out there? No, you're not. Okay. Appraisers, most of y'all know that. No, we're not. Okay. The square footage of the accessory dwelling unit is not in the GLA, the gross living area, or the square footage of the home. If it is, it's not an accessory dwelling unit. Maybe it's a house that's got a wing to it. I've seen those. I'm sure y'all seen a wing where there's like another kitchenette or even a kitchen, but it's all access from the main dwelling. It's all part of the house, right? Well, then you've got a different conversation at that point. You've got a house with two kitchens, right? You've got a house that's got a primary kitchen and a secondary kitchen. And that has to be a conversation for appraisers as well, right? That the house has two kitchens. What's the functional use of the second kitchen? What's the functional utility of the property that in that case? But is an accessory dwelling unit? No, right? We need to have a separate entrance, a separate facility. It needs to be smaller than the main dwelling. It needs to have all those factors, okay? So not including square footage, right? So as we have verified that, now it's time. We our property. The subject property is an appraiser or realtors. That's your now that's your client. All right. That's the booger bear I got today, right? We got one with an ADU. Okay. All right. So now we got to locate comparables, right? Listings and MLS. And I think honestly, this is one of the most important parts, guys, because if you're going to value it, we got to start with quality data, right? And quality data is hard to come by with ADUs, and I'm going to explain why, right? And some of the tests and some of the experience I have there, and some of the ways we can search for this information, and then verify it, guys. Verify, okay? So first thing you can do is just use the standard tools within your local MLS. So in this case, the Houston area MLS, HAR MLS, has lots of different options to search for this stuff. In the exterior section on a single family search for MLS here, you can use it's called detached garage apartment/quarters. That's an option you can search in our MLS system, right? So you can search properties that have that label. There's another spot on our MLS called the room descriptions, right? This is where it's talking about a primary bedroom up or down, or how many bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. There is something in there that's hidden. It's at the bottom. It's called garage apartment. It's also there's one called guest suite with kitchen. Okay. There's another one in there called quarters/guest house, right? They're all on the bottom. They're like buried in the bottom of that search engine. Okay. But they're in there. And it's a good tool to go locate a sale or a listing that the real estate agent may have hopefully inputted that as a term in the MLS when they put that property up for sale. Okay. And if they did, then that sale or listing would likely show up with that parameter in your MLS search. Okay. There's another item at the very bottom, and I've seen this. I sit on the board of realtors for Houston, Beaumont, and Bryan College Station. All three of these have the additional field option at the very bottom of your MLS. If you click that, you can add like unique items that aren't like typically on the first page of your MLS. And there's one in there, of course, for garage apartment square footage. Oh, so you could put 1 square foot or more, right, in that parameter, and it'll just show you any property that has a square footage that an agent calculated for a garage apartment, right? It could be 200 feet or 1,500 feet for the garage apartment, right? So these are just tools, right? Another tool is a keyword search. Okay, all three of those MLSs that I sit on have that as well. You can search words like apartment or APT or GAR APT or quarters or bunkhouse, all those key terms we talked about. Be flexible. That's a great piece of advice, is that think about who is inputting this data to MLS, right? Different levels of experience for the agents, different levels of experience with descriptions and different opinions of what they're seeing on the property and what maybe their clients are calling something, and maybe what they've been trained to call something. If it's like I said, a garage apartment or a quarters or a casita, right? All these terms can be interchangeable as search tools, right, inside the MLS system. It does not mean they are what they are being said they are, though, right? It's just how they're being described, right? So these are tools to locate sales and listings, okay? And then the most manual search, the appraiser and the agent should be a local expert, right? So if you know the area, you can just open up a search parameter for sales and look in an aerial, right? If you know that area, just look on an aerial, see if you can find a sale in the past, 365 days that has there's a building in the backyard. Oh, Let me investigate that, right? Sometimes it has to be manual, right? Sometimes the data is very limited, and I have gotten lucky by locating a sale that had a separate feature like that just by looking at an aerial map. Okay, and it did show up that way. Okay, so those are tips and tricks to locate those sales and listings. And now we're going into common errors in the verification of that data. Okay, so the key factor. This is a key factor. The verification of that data is key for everybody. It's key for appraisers, key for agents that are developing a CMA, right? If we don't understand what we're looking at for an ADU, then we're not going to get a good CMA. Yeah, it's going to be skewed. It's going to be off. Okay. The first main question that you've got, if you find a sale or a listing that has an ADU, as comparison, right? Did they correctly remove the square footage from the listing? Okay. That is number one, right? I've seen it all. I've seen it all. I've seen it included, not included. I've seen excellent commentary from agents about what their methodology was when they listed it, meaning, hey, I've got a 2,500 square foot house. There's a 400 square foot quarters. I did not include it, and it's separate, and this is the square footages, and it's in the agent remarks, right? Then I've got some that have no comments, right? Then it's time to investigate, right? It's all over the place, okay? And a lot of times it's not their fault, right? You read a definition and then you try to figure out, in applying that definition into your practice, you go, well, have I been trained this way? Have I had someone with experience to train me to do that? Is this my first time doing it? Maybe it's, the norm in my office to do it this way, rule of thumb, right? There's lots of different things that occur as to why an agent or a broker may input information differently. But it's our job to understand it and to dissect it and to discover what the correct data is there, okay? So tools, right? Read the MLS. Just read it, right? Just read the words, okay? If the agent there's two sections usually. There's a private and a public section. Read both of them. Hopefully some level of description has been presented in there about how the ADU has been treated, right? Has it been treated as part of square footage on accident? Have they told you they did it? If they did it, great, right? We can dissect it then, right? If they didn't, we've got some more tests to do. But read the commentary, see what they said about the ADU, if they said anything at all in there, okay? Also, what is the source? All right, that's another big one, guys. So you go to the square footage of an MLS, you got your primary dwelling, and it says 2,500 square foot slash what? Slash what? So square footage slash what? Well, the slash is your data verification tool. Okay, agent inputs that, right? What do you normally see? Tax. Okay, so they've extracted the square footage of the home from the tax records, right? Public data set. Okay, what other ones can we have? Well, seller. Oops, seller's tough, right? Seller can be biased, right? They can take tax records and say, well, I added the ADU of 400 square foot, so my 2,500 square foot home is 2,900 square foot home. All right, per seller. Oops, I don't know. Maybe not, right? So seller is another one. Builder, that's sometimes can be a great source, right? Builder, if they've got plans and specs or some type of architectural footprint that they've used to present the square footage, that's a great source. Hey, appraiser. You see that one a lot too. Prior appraisal, or maybe they hire someone like me to go out there and to measure the property and verify the square footage. There's also another word that's nebulous called other. Who knows what that is, right? Others out there too. Other. Well, that's a big question mark. So, all right. So each one of those guys, I keep harping on the square footage because ADU, once you've identified it, it's all about how was it applied in the footage of the home and its orientation when it's sold, right? So real estate agents are pulling these things for CMAs on a price per foot model, right? But if it's inappropriately added into the square footage, then it's going to skew your CMA down actually, right? If it's extracted out, then it's going to pull it up, maybe show that the ADU had a significant effect on the sales price, right? And the same thing with appraisers. We don't want to input data and then double dip into it. Like if the square footage was inclusive of the ADU on accident, and then we still applied an ADU adjustment, right? Well, we've done it twice at that point. We don't want to do that. We have to identify the square footage and how it was applied in that listing. We have to, right? It is the number one thing we got to look at, okay? So if it's tax records, pull them up, right? We would do that usually anyway. Appraisers do, but real estate agents, you've got your ADU property, you're pulling that CMA, you're about to input that sucker in there, and they've got tax. Just go look, just pull it up real quick. Just go look at it. The most tax records you can expand the improvements out, right? Take a look at them. Is it a 1-story or 2-story house? Okay, do the math, right? 1,000 plus 1,000. That's a 2,000 square foot house. Huh? MLS says 2,500. That's different than tax records. Well, that could be the ADU, right? Could be the difference there, right? So be careful. A lot of times the tax records will divvy it out into primary and secondary structure, okay? Or original structure, and you can see the build dates, right? One of them was built in 2004, one of them was built in 1965. Well, that new one's probably the ADU, right? Right. The original one is the primary dwelling. Okay. This goes on, guys. Well, I'll kind of combine it to move quickly, but if it's a builder plans, find the source, right? Hopefully the agent attached it to the MLS, pull it up, look at it, verify it. Okay. If you can't, and that's the source, give the agent a call. Hey, send me the blueprints, whatever the source is you're using. That goes for the prior appraisal. Most of them, if they're using that, they're going to attach it as a PDF into the MLS. If they don't, go ask for it. I want to look at it, right? I want to verify it. Okay. And that's for all the sources. Okay. Other, I love that one. I just call the agent. Hey, can I see the other information you got? I'd like to verify your other. Okay. So a great source, guys, great source. So most ADUs, accessory dwelling units, are not built at the same time as a primary residence, from my experience. Okay. I'm sure there's exceptions to that. Okay. I actually can think of one exception, right? When the new construction, big custom home, they wanted the quarters from the beginning. I get it. Right. But most of your experience on these ADUs is some type of conversion at some point, right? To an existing attic or like above garage space that was there for a while and then they converted it. Or it was added at some point, whether they needed to bring in-laws home or they had some other reason to add, offset cost through rental, some other reason to add it, okay? That's important because if the property on the MLS has history, property archive history, go look at it, okay? If it sold 10 years ago, you should have a property archive if it was on the MLS, right? If that property did not have the accessory dwelling unit at that time, this is a great source, guys. We use it all the time. Okay. If it did not have it, it's going to have a different square footage. If the current one is inclusive of the ADU on accident, they're going to be different, right? Because the first one is the original square footage of the primary dwelling. Okay. Can be a very useful tool. Okay. Many agents are very good about their MLS photos. So, take a look at those as you're trying to discover whether it's detached or attached, these accessory dwelling units, whether it qualifies, whether it has a kitchen. Look at those photos and then blow them up. And then the little comments on the bottom, just kind of read what the agent's saying. And they'll say, oh, this is access from the staircase outside. This is the upstairs, accessory dwelling unit, right? That's a good way to look at it. And then, use these tools to identify the feature as an accessory dwelling unit. And then whether or not, if it's not, what is it, right? Then we go to those other terms. Oh, this is flex space. That's the man cave. That's the, not an accessory dwelling unit. Okay. So if you've got a workshop as a feature, you can hopefully find a workshop as a comparable, but you've got more flexibility. You can find a small one, or you can find maybe a barn/workshop combo. If you've got an office, we're looking for maybe a pool house or an office. There's a lot more flexibility with, like, when you're finding a comparable that's not an accessory dwelling unit, that it's got a similar feel, but doesn't have to be like perfect, right? We're looking for the best comparable. If it's perfect, it's perfect, but we're looking for the best comparable. An accessory dwelling unit, we need to find an accessory dwelling unit as a comparable. Okay. So that's the reason why the identification is important. Okay, valuing them, right? Now this is hard to really dig into without, pulling up an appraisal grid and showing, example of extraction. But once we've identified it, it's the input, right? It's the input for the agent and their CMA, and it's the input of the appraiser in their grid. Okay. The separation of the square footage is key. Okay. So in an appraisal grid, the accessory dwelling unit is going to go as a feature item at the bottom, right? There's a bunch of blank spaces on the bottom of the appraisal grid. That's where the accessory dwelling unit is going to go to be valued at the bottom. Okay. For an agent, if they're locating a listing or a sale that they're going to apply into their CMA, the biggest thing I tell people there is if you've identified one that looks great, right, and you're going to put it into the model for a price per foot model, if it's including the square footage on inaccurately, it's going to skew your results down. Okay. In the cases in which you've got one that's inaccurately done, do your CMA without it, do it without it, and then manually do that one as a data set by itself. Divide the price, the sales price into the correct square footage of that property. It can often show you how that accessory dwelling unit is impacting the value of that property. Okay. It's key. Blank field. Okay. That we just talked about that. Blank field at the bottom of the URAR is where you'll find in an appraisal the adjustment for accessory dwelling unit. In an ideal scenario, you're looking for obviously the most similar properties. Most of them will likely not have accessory dwelling units, right? So the job of the appraiser is to keep that as compact as possible, so that the major feature difference shows its face relatively easily, right? If you make small adjustments for square footage, small adjustments for site size or features, other little features, the result is you want an assignment that looks pretty clean except for that one item, right? And that one item should be showing you how it's affecting it, right? Whether it's in a substantially positive position or maybe very little marketability at all. In some cases, that's also the case, okay? So the location of the sale with an ADU is critical. For an appraisal, when you're applying that adjustment, the data can be difficult, right? In some cases, it can be very difficult. Just support your methodology, guys. Discuss the difficulty in the assignment. Discuss, what kind of parameters you use. All those parameters we talked about to discover that sale. How you extracted that value. Discuss your methodology, right? Discuss how you got there, your data set. A lot of times, if my data is clean in my assignment, in my appraisal, I'm using the sales that are in front of me for the extraction of that value. It is not always the case, though, right? We can pull that from the market itself, right? If we found a sale, but there's more similar sales that to that property itself, we can extract it from the market separately. Just talk about the methodology, guys. Talk about how you extracted the value and how it's applied. In an ADU, agents, listen up, guys, right? This is why we talk about this, right? An appraiser, if we're going to value the property for underwriting, okay, we're going to value it for a purchase, right? That's what you're trying to sell the property. We are going to find a sale with an ADU. Okay, we have to. Okay. Now that can be a lot of things. Okay. If you're in a difficult market, what's the appraiser going to do? They're going to pull the date of sale back, guys. If we have to, we're going to go over a year. Okay. We're going to go over a year. That's okay. We can look at time, right? We can look at how time applies to that. And if there's a time adjustment necessary there, we're going to go back in time if we have to. Okay. Y'all should too. Okay. We're going to expand the proximity. We're going to pull that proximity out, right? We like to stay pretty close. If we've got to, we got to. We're going to go look for it. Okay. We're going to push that proximity out, reasonable, right? We're not going to go to markets that are substantially inferior or superior, but we're going to go look. Okay. And proximity is not going to hold us back from going to try to locate that sale. Okay. If we can't, we have not proven that that property has marketability. Okay. We haven't proven it, right? We can prove that through, a dated sale. We can prove it through, expanding out to, less proximate markets with discussion about that and how it might affect value. But if we can't find an ADU sale, we got a problem, right? We got a problem and supporting an adjustment for it. That being said, my experience, guys, I've done well over 15,000 appraisals in my career. Probably reviewed 40,000. I've seen them all, right? I've seen everything. I have maybe one, if I can even think of one, that I couldn't find an ADU, right? We got to get creative. Sometimes we got to get creative to find something. But if you're developing a CMA, right, and you're developing it without using an ADU, you're in trouble. All right, because your appraiser is going to do it, right, and your underwriter is going to require it too. Okay, so go find the ADU, good or bad. Make sure you're aware of it. Apply it into your CMA. Appraisers, we're going to go find it too. Okay. In the unique cases, so can an ADU carry no value? It is unusual. I will give it that. It would be highly unusual from my experience that it carries zero value, right? But if there's not an extractable data set, then you're kind of stuck, okay? Can it carry little value, minimal contributory value? Yes, actually often, right? Often it can be an issue to support a substantial adjustment for an ADU, unless it's very common in the market, right? Then you got a lot of data, okay? Underwriting concerns, right? We talked about it, data sales, proximity, lack of support. So appraisers, be sure to discuss that again, as I talked about, discuss your methodology, give the breadcrumb. I call it breadcrumbs. Complex assignments need breadcrumbs, right? If you've got a reviewer coming, hey, I might be a reviewer, right? I might come in and be reviewing the reports, right? You give me breadcrumbs, right? Tell me how you got there. As long as you give me a good example of, the data that you pulled, the difficulties in which that search parameter was, and reasonable development methodology, you're going to be fine, right? Just do the best job you can out there. And I'll end sort of here is that remember that if you identify an ADU, you will have an ADU sale on an appraisal grid. Okay, we have to have one, right? So we're going to go locate that. Agents, please spend the time to identify those and make sure they're separate when you're doing your CMA. Make sure they're separate when we're doing it into the MLS. The way we all kind of work as a team, right? Because we don't want to. Nobody's trying to hurt each other. We're trying to create a positive data set, right? Positive data set that you can also use in the future from your colleagues that have appropriately inputted ADUs in theirs. And this is growing, guys. The ADUs are growing. I'm getting more and more of these guys. The property values are going up. They're more expensive to own property. People are finding different opportunities to create these accessory dwelling units on their property, right? On their parcel, right? They might rent them. They might keep their kids in them. They may keep their mother-in-law in them. They're showing up more, right? They're showing up more. This is going to be a trend that you will continue to see up here. Okay. So, but if you have any questions, shoot them over to Dave. Again, my name is Eric Bowden, Bowden Appraisal Group. You can reach us at bowdenappraisal.com. Our office phone number is 281-367-4248. Email us at admin@bowdenappraisal.com. That's ADMIN @bowdenappraisal.com. I'm sure we'll be presenting our information up shortly as well, but give us a call, right? If you've got something unique, I love talking about it. I love helping realtors, including appraisers. I've got appraisers that call me too with unique scenarios. Give us a call, give us an email, give us a text, and maybe we'll do an appraisal for you as well, right? So thank you all for listening. I appreciate it.